Voters is a 100-year-old nonpartisan grassroots civic organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We would like to thank the Dubuque Community School Board candidates for their participation this evening and for their invaluable gift to Dubuque by being candidates for public office. The 5 candidates vying for 4-year terms on the Dubuque Community School Board are Dirk Hamill, Sarah Jacobitz-Kazire, Cynthia Mueller, Kate Parks, and Lisa Whitman. Our first question is, what special skill will you bring to the school board? And Mr. Hamill, we'll begin with you.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been a lawyer for 37 years. I just retired at the end of this summer. And in the law, the skills that I've developed that I think are going to help, I'm always analyzing the facts and the law in situations. Our job then is to come up with a solution and a strategy to solve the issue. And you need, as a lawyer, to be able to work with people to develop a good compromise in difficult situations. So those would be the skills. In terms of other factors, I am a big believer and supporter in the value of public education, and I think I have a working amount of information in the school district. My wife was a long-time teacher. My sister was a long-time principal. I've mentored at Washington Middle School and at Prescott, and many of our close and best friends are school teachers. Thank you.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
Hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Jacobitz-Kazire. I'm a local family physician that's been serving Dubuque for nearly 10 years. Currently, I'm employed at Grand River Medical Group, where half of my patients are pediatric, newborns through adolescents. I believe my special skill is in part related to my work as a family physician. This is a role that requires me to take care of individuals from all different backgrounds with different levels of understanding about their own health care and what's happening if they're feeling sick or they get hurt. It requires me to assess their level of understanding and provide a clear diagnosis and plan that they can trust in and understand. I also feel like my role as a family physician puts me perfectly positioned to understand what's currently happening in the Dubuque School District, because so many of my patients are current students, teachers, or administrators. This, in addition to having 3 children currently in Dubuque Public Schools, means that I feel like I really understand not only the physical challenges that might be happening in regard to what happened with the pandemic a couple years ago, but also the emotional and mental needs that students are currently facing. I feel like both my professional and personal experiences put me in a great position to serve with this board.
Ms. Mueller.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Mueller. I'm a native Dubuquer. I have 2 children that grew up in the Dubuque Community School District and 3 grandchildren that are now at Sageville. I taught for 38 years in the Dubuque Community School District, and for 24 of those years, I was the band director at Jefferson. As an itinerant instrumental music teacher, I have taught in almost all the buildings in the district, and I have taught at all levels, including elementary, middle school, high school, and even had some administrative experience because I was instrumental chairperson for 3 years. So I want to bring these skills to the work of the board. My main goal in running is to promote the building of the new middle school and to get air conditioning in the schools that don't already have it. To that end, for the past 2 years, I have attended many board meetings. I have served on the community task force that was looking for a site to build a new middle school. And now I'm on a great team with the Yes Committee. We worked to gather signatures on petitions to get the issue put on the bond, to get the bond issue put on the ballot this fall. And now we're working to get yes votes. Beyond that, I look as a school board member as being someone who will be a link between the administration and the community. So you can take the ideas and concerns of students, teachers, parents, staff members, taxpayers and bring those issues to the administration, try to find a solution, or to implement their new ideas. Thank you.
Ms. Parks?
Hi, my name is Kate Parks. I am a mom of 2 children who are in the public school system, and I'm also an educator and a sociologist at Loras College. And 4 years ago, I was elected to the school board and very excited to be seeking re-election. 2 years ago, I was elected by the board to serve as the board president, and I was elected to do that again this past year. Skills that I've been able to bring to the board and that I plan to continue to bring is an ability to really look at the big picture when we're making decisions. We really have to think as a board at a systems level, considering how the decisions we make impact not just one school or one classroom, but really all kids, all teachers and staff, and the community at large. I've been a collaborative leader and a thoughtful decision maker, leading our board through some of the most important decisions that we can make as a board. I've been able to work with others when we've had disagreements and maybe different perspectives on an issue. I'm a researcher as well, so I can understand data and be able to ask the right questions that best position our school district to help kids succeed. And I've been a strong advocate for public education, using my voice both locally and at the state level to really put the focus on why public education is so important, and we need to be giving it as many resources as we can. Thanks.
Ms. Whitman?
Thank you. I'm going for my 3rd term, so I've been on the school board member for 8 years now. I've been vice president the last 2 years, and we've accomplished a lot in the last 8 years. I was part of so many different things that we continue to go through. We hired a new superintendent. We have virtual inclement weather that we're going to start doing this fall. We got through COVID. We are one-on-one laptops. We are looking at a bond referendum for improvements to the school, career pathways, extracurricular, STEM programs. Been involved with selling a couple of district properties, and so many things that I feel like we're still in the works in. I want to continue my work on the board. My background is I've been working in banking all my working career. I am a lender, mortgage loans, and with my analytical thinking and common sense thinking to get through all these projects and all the decision-making that goes on. There's a board of 7 different people, so we all have different points of view. We have a wonderful cabinet and superintendent and staff to work with. So it's a complicated position. You know, there's a lot to look at, but we have a lot of resources to use. And I feel like there's some more that I want to continue with. So I look forward to serving again.
Thank you. Our next question is, what do you see as the greatest challenges in public education today? And Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. I think the greatest challenge is trying to understand what's going on with the number of students that our district needs to serve over the next 10 years and how we will use taxpayer valuable resources to meet those needs. As Ms. Mueller mentioned, it is of paramount importance that the citizens of Dubuque take the time to understand the bond referendum. I do believe the 5 of us sitting here today all have vocalized the need to vote yes on the bond referendum, because I think without passage of this in its current form, we are potentially creating a disservice to the Dubuque students. Students deserve a safe community school. They deserve air conditioning so that school is a place where they're comfortable learning and they can focus on the curriculum. We need to make sure that our current schools have sufficient funding to be able to continue to fulfill our obligation, whether this is in regular or special education. And lastly, we need to make sure that our budget allows us to continue making school a joyful place, whether this is supporting athletics or the musical arts, other important programs that are currently running, such as financial literacy, or our Vertex community partnerships to ready students for after high school graduation.
Ms. Mueller.
I think the greatest challenge in education has perhaps always been the same, and that is that we need to find each student's talents and develop them for the benefit of our community. So we need to focus on reading, writing, mathematics. We need to work on a good, solid education. And we also need to include the arts, and we also need to include classes in skills in the trades, and also in business partnerships and community partnerships to link people and students with their future career. And to that point, I support the career pathways that we have going on in our schools today. So that's what's important to develop a student's talents and then to link them with their future work in the community.
Thank you. Ms. Parks.
Thank you. I think one of the biggest challenges in public education, particularly in the state of Iowa, is considering the declining amount of state funding that we've been receiving for public education over the last 20 years and the impact that this has on our schools and on our districts. So that's a huge problem, and it's also coincides with the time when our state has passed a voucher bill that's allowing more parents to take money out of the public school system without a lot of accountability for what that money does. And so I think those two things are kind of pressing concerns that I think we're facing at the state of Iowa, and the reason that we're making decisions about putting a bond referendum forward, talking about shuffling buildings, all of those kinds of things. In addition to that, some of the national challenges that exist for education exist here in Iowa and Dubuque as well. We have to be conscientious about teacher shortages and staff shortages, trying to find ways to attract teachers and staff to work in our district. That is made more difficult when funding is not adequate and not keeping up with the cost of living and inflation. And we also are still, though this year is a lot more normal than the last few have been, we're still looking at the impacts of COVID and have to address that.
Thank you. Ms. Whitman.
The district and all school districts face a lot of challenges. My partners all here have mentioned a lot of them. Funding seems to be at the top. As you know, we're going through a bond referendum to consolidate buildings. We have a lot of older buildings, and we have to be financially responsible, fiscally responsible with the taxpayer money and look into the future for the declining enrollments. You know, we could maybe, there's ways to cut back, but the last place we want to cut back is teacher pay, teacher recruitment, all the staff. So that's why we're looking at buildings consolidation, so we can save some funds where we're not touching education and the people that work in our buildings. We want to have great buildings for all our students, and it's tough when you have some older buildings. Declining enrollment is a challenge. There's less families, less students, and it's not that Dubuque has shrunk, it's just that there's less kids going to school at this, you know, families have less children, so it's less students in our buildings. Another thing that we're working on a lot is to prepare our students for graduation. So we're really trying to find different avenues. It's not always a four-year education, college to go to. After graduation, we're looking at the workforce to prepare our students when they walk across that stage, what they're going to do next. We've brought on online learning. So there's a lot of challenges that we're working with.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel.
Thank you very much. I think the biggest challenge is always inspiring and educating all the students. In my limited role, as I mentioned, I've mentored up at Washington Middle School. I mentored down at Prescott. And, you know, I was one of those kids that always liked school, and school came easily to me, and it was fun. But every student doesn't have that same experience. And, you know, I'm just so impressed when I see the teachers in the district, working to make those kids, feel that they're special, that they're accepted, and, helping to inspire and educate them to do their best work. Related to that, we as for everyone has said, state aid has declined, and so that makes this bond referendum more important than usual. In the two schools that I've spent the most time in, Washington Middle School is over 100 years old. Prescott's a very new school. I think it really does help to have new schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller, you'll answer the next question first. And the question is, do you personally support the bond measure? Why or why not?
Yes, I absolutely support the bond issue because this all started a while ago with Stan Reingans, who did a study to see how much it costs to run Roosevelt and how much it costs to run Washington and Jefferson combined. And he found that you could save $3.5 million a year in operating expenses just by combining the two older middle schools into one middle school. So if we have two middle schools, we can save that in operating expenses, which can be used for teacher salaries or curriculum programs. So that would be very important. Yes, so I do support that. I think it's a way to go. We have facilities in our community where 50% of our students do not have modern facilities and air conditioning, and 50% do. And it's time that we have equitable facilities for all the students in our district. So the air conditioning of the older buildings is also important. And Eisenhower needs a new gymnasium. They have a large population. They cannot fit all of their student body into one space, so they need the new gymnasium. So, and by doing this, we can keep the tax levy rate from increasing, and it will remain at $14.51 per thousand in taxable evaluation. So it's a good deal for the district and for the students in our community and for our community as a whole.
Thank you. Dr. Parks.
Thank you. I absolutely support this bond referendum. I think, Ms. Mueller highlighted a lot of the important aspects of why we got here. And I think if you really connect it back to what we were all talking about before related to state funding, like that's really kind of where it begins, that the funding that we're getting is not adequate and it's not keeping up with the costs that districts face. And so as a board, we were at a point where we needed to figure out how we would be able to save this money so that we're not putting the district at risk when it comes to our financial situation with the state. And we want to be able to be competitive, and we want to be able to have competitive salaries and to not, make decisions that are going to most impact kids, which is what cutting the general fund could mean. In addition to that, there's just so much awesome opportunity coming from what we're looking at. Like the new middle school gives us a chance to have modern space that really fit the needs of what kids who are learning today desire and require. We'd be able to air condition buildings, which if you remember how hot it was really hot, and that makes it difficult for students to learn. The Eisenhower issue is really important because there's such a limited amount of time that they have to feed all of those kids lunch before they have to turn the gym back into a gym. So it really meets a lot of the 10-year plan that the board had for what we wanted to accomplish for the facilities, and we would not be able to do those things without this bond referendum passing.
Ms. Whitman.
I am for the bond referendum as well. And how this all started was to bring equity to our middle school students. We have two middle schools that are over 100 years old. And Roosevelt, they always call that the new school, but it's actually 18, 19 years old now. But that has opportunities for every student that goes in that building. And we want to bring that for all our middle school students. We're also looking at making the middle schools as feeder schools for our high schools. So when we changed the boundaries for the two high schools, equity was completely equal in Senior and Hempstead. So we don't hear anymore that one school has more to offer than the other, but we don't have equity in our middle schools right now. So that was the number one reason we started this project. And the funding, we're going for a bond. The SAVE funds, the 1% sales tax, is not going to pay for all of this. So that's why we're going for a bond referendum. And we chose to add more projects, like were mentioned, the air conditioning, the new gym for Eisenhower, the baseball, softball facility, and the possibility of a land acquisition down the road if we need to build a new elementary school, depending on where the population growth is. If we didn't add all of those to the bond referendum now, then it would be a very, very long time before we'd be able to do any more projects. So I feel that this really needs to happen, and I hope it does, and it was started with equity for our kids.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel, do you support the bond measure?
Yes, I support all the projects in the bond, and I especially support the new middle school and putting air conditioning in the remaining elementary schools. I think the bond is an important and smart investment in our children. I'd urge that we try to maybe change the way we look at these things. When Bob Ray was the governor of Iowa, and in the early years, the Terry Branstad administration, the governor's office and the whole state always had the goal, let's make Iowa schools #1 in the country. And we've moved away from that. I had the advantage of going to school when that was the priority, and I think we should move back towards that, where it's not just, what can we get by, but let's see if we can do the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
So I want to share a couple stories because my husband, who's a teacher in the Dubuque Community Schools District, has been subbing, and he kindly accepted a long-term substitute position several months ago. A colleague was having a baby. He has a generous heart and agreed to fulfill that position. This happened to be the gym teacher position at Eisenhower. So on the days when it was 105 degrees indoors, this is the school where my husband had agreed to teach. Those students were sweating, they were clammy, they were trying to carry their water bottles around. And it was my observation that actually not a lot of learning was happening in these buildings that were not air conditioning. 6 buildings not air conditioned. Eisenhower has now been retrofitted and has air conditioning, which is an acceptable arrangement for now, but with a population of 595 students, they can no longer even have a single meeting space for assemblies, let alone get the kids in and out for lunch and then back to gym. So I've seen this firsthand, that we need to not only have a new, more modern middle school space, but we do need the other parts of this carefully crafted bond referendum. Secondly, part of my job at Grand River Medical Group has been to recruit new physicians, and they want to know 2 things. 1, is Dubuque safe? And 2, do they have excellent schools?
Thank you. Another funding-related question. What is your stand on vouchers for private schools? We'll begin with Ms. Parks.
Not in favor. I think it was a really unfortunate law that was passed early in the legislature last February. It defunds public education. There's less money available from the state that's coming to us because there is basically a second school system that's being funded with taxpayer dollars. And that money is not being held accountable in any way. Whereas this public school system, there's all kinds of ways that we are accountable to the public. We have to share a budget with you. We ask for your feedback on projects that we're doing, and we have to tell you about them. It's all transparent and out in the open, and none of that is happening with the money that is going in this voucher system right now, and that's a huge concern. In addition to that, public schools educate every kid. We take everyone, and private schools don't have to do that. Like, there is a place for public or private education, but we need to be really clear that they don't have to accept every student. If your student has a disability, if they have learning needs, if they have behaviors, they don't have to keep those students, and they often don't. They come back to public school. So I think it's a real tragedy for our state. It moves in the wrong direction, like Mr. Hamel pointed out, of what Iowa could be when we're looking at at what our education system was, the priorities that we had in making Iowa the best for public education, and it's been a real problem and will continue to get worse as more people qualify for the voucher in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Whitman.
When the voucher education savings account is the official name of it, started, yes, the school board, we did issue a proclamation that we were not in favor of it. But there are some other things that I did look at. There's two sides to every issue. Taxpayers, the private families that send their kids to private schools are taxpayers as well as the public schools. I believe this all started because there was a surplus of money and the governor wanted to give choice to families. But the result is, with the numbers that just came out for the enrollment, we only lost a net of 9 students from our public schools going to the parochial schools. We don't know the reasons. We don't know if it was because of the education savings account or they just chose for whatever reason to go to the Holy Family. So that is not a big scare. You know, we did not lose. There was not a mass exit. And like Kate Parks had commented, we educate every student, so we're never going to turn down a student. We're going to work our hardest to accept everyone and get them through. So I think after it all settles down, you know, Dubuque has good schools, private and public, and our parents already have choices.
Mr. Himmel.
Yes, thank you. I do not support the use of public dollars for the voucher program. I think there's a lot of troubling aspects to the program. Many of the private schools have already raised their tuitions by the approximate amount of the voucher, $7,635. So in effect, the vouchers don't make those schools more affordable to families. As everyone has mentioned, private schools can and do admit only, what you could call the easy students and have the option of rejecting the more challenging students. Additionally, throughout the whole state, there's a lot of places where there's no private school option. And it took the rural Republicans were against this voucher program because they recognized this was going to hurt their public schools. And the governor tried to pass this twice unsuccessfully before getting it through this time. But I think the view of the rural Republicans show that it is, you know, a dangerous thing for public schools. And finally, as people have mentioned, the money being handed out, there's very limited accountability and transparency there. Thank you.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
Yes, I have to agree with my colleagues. I will not support a measure that I think will likely harm public schools. And I feel like the way that the current vouchers are organized, there's no accountability, and money is being potentially diverted to students who already have sufficient resources for a high-quality education. I will support parents who choose to put their students into public schools or to private schools, but we have a obligation to taxpayers to make sure that we meet the needs of every student. With the vouchers, it will be nearly impossible to continue meeting all students' needs with less funding. So for this reason, I'm against vouchers. I think they're bad for Iowa.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller, what's your stand on vouchers for private schools?
I have a little bit of a different take. I believe that the state of Iowa and all the public are obligated to fully fund public education. Because as John Adams said, the reason the government's involved in free public education is because democracy cannot survive without an educated electorate. So I believe that the state did not give the school districts enough money, and I think they could have given us more, maybe related to inflation. Maybe we should tie it to that. But I think that our state is rich enough that we can also do the ESAs. And getting more money into private schools is not a bad thing for our students. It's a good thing. If you read about St. Columbkills, they said they're able to do more in improving their building and expanding their opportunities for students. So I think any money that goes into educating our students is a good thing, because we should all be working together to provide a good education for our kids. So I see a role for both of those things, and I think the state of Iowa can afford it, because they just said, due to the amount of tax revenue that's been coming in, they can reduce the corporate tax rate from 8.4 to 7.1% 4 years earlier than we were going to. And I think this is a good thing for our state, because it's going to attract corporations to us. I think we have potential for growth, and I think we have potential for a workforce that'll be looking for a good school system. So I think we can grow and improve.
Thank you, everyone. The next question. Senate File 496, passed last session, calls for removal of certain books from classrooms and has penalties such as teachers losing their teaching licenses if these books are found in their classrooms. Do you support SF 496? Ms. Whitman, your answer.
I do not support anything that is taking away from education. If there is a book that has profound language in it, something that is very uncomfortable to teach, there is other options. There might be a few books that maybe should be put on the back burner, not presented to the students, but we don't want to dictate what the teachers, the professionals feel could be a good story, a good book to educate or to go through with their students. There's no better place than at school to read different materials, controversial, it's all in the presentation. But if there is a book that a parent is not comfortable with, or a subject matter that their student's going to be listening to in the classroom, they do have the opportunity to opt out. They do have the opportunity to go to the teacher, go to the principal of that school, and plead their case for the reasons they feel this is not, appropriate for their student. And we have formed a team of professionals, not just the language arts teachers, that if there are books that are questionable, we have different eyes that are going to look at these books and make a decision. So I don't like to see one set of families taking away a book for what their beliefs are and someone else that thinks, well, this is okay, because they all have the option to opt out.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel.
Yes, thank you. I don't agree with Senate File 496, and I do not agree with book banning. In the educational setting, basically the district staff, they're reviewing and approving the curriculum and the materials in the curriculum. And I agree, they should have the ability there to make these choices. As Alsman stated, to the extent that individual parents don't agree with the choice of the materials, they can have their child opt out of having to deal with those things. And I've always been comfortable and supportive of parents saying, I don't want my child reading that book, but I don't support the idea that a parent who doesn't like a book can make decisions for other students. I like the idea, the way we're going, having the professionals make the choices, and if parents don't agree, they can have their student opt out. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
I am opposed to SF 496 in its regard to book bans, because although I support an individual family's desire to not expose their student to content they find objectionable, I feel they have no right to put that belief on the rest of the students. In my own education, I was raised by two public school teachers. My dad taught shop and my mom taught home ec before she retrained as a respiratory therapist. Books were an avenue for me to explore other ways of thinking, other cultures that when I was growing up in rural Nebraska, I was not yet exposed to. I think the board is in a position where we need to understand what this what this legislature means and how we can implement it so that we do not violate the law, but also we can still trust teachers in their earnest efforts to raise critical thinkers of our next generation.
Ms. Mueller, do you support SF 496?
I believe that parents have a right to expect a neutral atmosphere in their classroom. And despite the fact that people have said here you can opt out, so the rest of the class is going ahead with the lesson and you're opting out, where are you going to go? Are you going to go in the hallway? How are you going to be taught? So I sort of think that students don't really have a chance to opt out. They are required to go to this class. They're required to go to public school. They were required to go to class. And I think that we should be able to provide a neutral atmosphere so that we tolerate all viewpoints but don't advocate for a viewpoint. I think there has to be a high threshold in order to ban something, but I think there are instances where perhaps things should be that are inappropriate for discussion in a school classroom. We're not banning it from the public view, but we are maintaining a neutral classroom experience for the students. So we do have to comply with state law, and it's my understanding that we pretty much in our district already are in compliance with the state law. So I don't think we have a lot of these issues. But if there should be an objection brought, I'm pretty sure that the 7 members of the school board could decide what is scientific biological fact and what is an explicit discussion or depiction that is inappropriate in the classroom.
Ms. Parks?
I am opposed to Senate File 496. I think that parents have an important role to play in their children's education and should be involved in what their kids are learning. But like others have said, they don't get to decide that for everybody's kids, and that's what this bill is promoting. I think it's really important to know that there is a process that we've already had for parents to opt out, and that kids are given an alternate option when they make that decision, if a parent makes that decision. So they're not just sent away, but there is an accommodation that's made so that they are still learning. It's just something that's not the same as everyone else. I also think it's really important to keep in mind that the way that we learn new things is by being uncomfortable at times and being exposed to new information, and that might not exist in a neutral kind of a setting. And it's important that our kids are learning about different cultures, that they feel represented when they're at school, and that we trust our teachers who are professionals and experts in the curriculum and the standards for the state of Iowa, that they know what's age appropriate for class, for our students to best learn. And that, we have to be thinking about how we're preparing our kids to live in a world that has a diversity of ideas, a diversity of people, and sheltering them from those ideas is not going to make them ready for that future.
Thank you all. We'll start with Mr. Hamill for our next question, which is, how do you plan to create a safe and supportive environment for LGBTQ students and educators in our schools?
Yes. So I do support LGBTQ students, and yes, I do want to provide a safe and inclusive environment. I'm not sure if the question goes into the bathroom policies, but the new state law does prohibit schools from providing transgender students access to multiple occupancy restrooms that do not align with their birth sex. At the same time, on request, the schools will provide transgender students access to a single unisex restroom. I support that arrangement. That is, as a practical effect, my understanding of what the Dubuque Community School District has been doing before the law made it a requirement. I disagree with the people that use this law to try to paint LGBTQ students as somehow being bad or less worthy. I do think, there's always tremendous value in having, getting to know diverse people. Not all the best things. I'm sorry, I'm out of time.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
Thank you. I think that it's really important that we support LGBTQ students, teachers, and staff. It's estimated in the medical literature that at least 2% of the population, if not far more, actually fits somewhere in a non-binary continuum of what we understand to be human sexuality and gender expression. The LGBT community is just one way that our students are diverse at this school, and I feel like through anti-bullying campaigns, fair representation where we treat students in a manner that feels organic and natural to them, and by building community, this is the best way to make our students feel included. If obstacles are put in the way for students where they do not feel included or they feel othered, this is one impediment to them feeling ready to learn in the classroom, and it does limit their potential of reaching not only their highest academic success, but also their propensity to becoming their most genuine adult self.
Ms. Mueller.
Yes, I believe all students should be treated equally and everyone should be accepted and their viewpoints should be tolerated. But I also think that students, we have to be neutral and we have to accept all other points of view as well. We can't favor one group over another. So I believe, getting to the bathroom issue, I believe that parents should be expected to have all biological female bathrooms and all biological male bathrooms, and there should be that neutral unisex individual bathroom that anyone can use. And that's where I stand on that. I guess I don't see that there needs to be a discussion so much about differences. There should be more acceptance of all points of views. And we shouldn't single out, okay, what race are you? What sexual orientation are you? We should not categorize students. We should treat everyone in an equal and like manner. And that's where I stand.
Ms. Parks, your answer.
So I think it's really important that all of our kids feel safe in school. And it's really important that the board members understand that not all of our kids are going to feel that way depending on what background that they have or identity that they have. And that this law really wasn't trying to solve any kind of problem, and instead it just created a lot more problems for some of our kids who are most at risk and most vulnerable. And so that's a huge problem. So as a board, I think that's key that we're supporting the district, both, we have to follow the law. But what I saw immediately happen was our staff reaching out to kids, reaching out to each other to make sure that those kids felt supported in whatever ways that they could. And it wasn't about pushing a particular agenda. It was about taking care of kids, which is what we're there to do. If a kid doesn't feel like they belong, if a kid feels attacked at school, then they won't go. They won't feel safe there, and that will impede their learning. I think it's also important for both of these laws, the last one that we talked about and this one, to know that the state passed this law with no guidance from the Department of Education, so it is completely up to districts and school boards to sort this out. So it matters a great deal who is at the table sorting it out, because we're the ones who have to sift through it. And so I really think we have to find ways within the limits of the law to make sure our kids know that when they come to Dubuque Community Schools, that they are safe and that we care about them and we want what's best for them.
Ms. Whitman, how do you plan to create a safe and supportive environment for LGBTQ kids?
These topics come up at our board meetings and with our teachers and staff and principals, and they're all trying to make everyone feel they're in a safe place. They have lots of resources, different people, counselors, their teachers, their principals, their paraprofessionals to go to if they don't feel safe and don't feel something is adequate for their, the way they want to be presented as, or, the bathrooms, all of that. It is a smaller population of students that go through this, but there are other issues than this that our students deal with daily. So we're trying to find ways. We don't have all the answers yet. This is a work in progress, but it is top of mind for all our schools to make everyone safe and figure out what accommodations can be made if they need to be made, because we want to accept everyone and we want to make everyone feel equal.
Thank you. The Dubuque Community School District has the lowest salaries of 24 districts in the Iowa Education Network. Paraprofessionals are paid less than $14 per hour. Bus drivers make more, but are still in short supply. What can be done? And we'll start with Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Interestingly, when I was door knocking last weekend, I had the chance to talk with a local bus driver who was explaining just how low the pay was, the degree of stress that he encounters on his route, and his grave concern that without retirees running our Dubuque buses, we would be in a world of hurt. In the Telegraph-Herald in July, they did publish that Dubuque had the lowest teacher salaries compared to about 25 other districts of similar composition. And at that time, the Director of Human Resources explained that we actually do have a rather fair compensation when you look at the benefits, especially health insurance benefits. So I do believe it's important as a board member to take the time and look at the nitty-gritty details of the budget, because I feel like the recruitment and retention of teachers, staff, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, school nurses, school secretaries is all vitally important to stabilize the school and prepare us for the next 10 years.
Ms. Mueller, your answer.
Yes, this is one of the reasons why we need to pass the bond issue so that we can get more money into our operating expenses, so that we can put more into salaries, especially the salaries for paraprofessionals and for bus drivers and for kitchen staff and people that are on the lower end of the pay scale. I do agree that the salary for teachers is not the only comparison that you can make, because we do have a good benefits package here, and that can make a difference for them. But it would be good to get more money to put into those salaries.
Ms. Parks.
I agree that this is an important reason why we were looking at finding efficiencies and put forward this bond referendum in order to do that. Being able to consolidate from 3 middle schools to 2 middle schools will save the district $3.5 million in the general fund, and 82% of the general fund is used for salary and benefits for employees. So being able to find ways for us to save money in other areas allows us to be able to find ways to increase salaries, because we know that they are not where they should be. We already know that, and we want to address it. When state aid doesn't keep up with us, that's part of the problem too. So we got, I think, 3% in new money from the state this year, and when our HR director negotiated with the unions, all of those raises ended up being about 3%. So, do the math on that. There's not a lot of room for us with the way the financials look at this moment to do better, but we certainly want to, because we understand how important all of our staff are for kids to succeed. And we're a large employer in Dubuque, and we want to be competitive and attract more people to come and work for us. So there's definitely room to keep improving, and that's why we need to find these efficiencies.
Ms. Whitman.
I agree with everything that was just said already. And just to go a little step further, we work with the unions for every of these groups of employees. And we do have a great benefit package for insurance. And insurance is one of the things that have gone up tremendously. We all have our taxes are raising, our car and house insurance is raising, so is the insurance for health coverage. So we work with the unions to see where would you rather have more in your pocket or more in the benefit package that can really save this less money out of your pocket to cover for insurance. So those are obstacles that we have to negotiate, decide which way to go. And it is top of mind. That's, like we said, the bond referendum, so we can put more money in our operating budget, because it is very important to retain the staff that we have. Teachers and paraprofessionals, anyone, they can take, we're trying to get them higher education so they can go up the ladder. So when you have your master's degree or continue education, you can get a bump. You can get bumps in pay when your longevity. So there is different ways to get bumps of pay. We wish we could pay more. That's the number one thing we don't want to cut back on, is teacher pay and all every category in our staff.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel, can you comment on salaries, please?
Yes, thank you. So, as everyone has said, we all would like to be able to pay the staff more. There's real limits and concrete problems, but I also agree with what everyone has said, that that we need to work at it, do what we can to find savings and help raise those salaries. In my time in the schools as a mentor, the paraprofessionals are doing an absolutely tremendous job. I've always been incredibly impressed by the maintenance staff, how hard they work.
They're awesome.
For taking care of the grounds and the buildings. And the kitchen staff are just some of the most friendly, cheerful people in the world. So I mean, there's I don't know as many bus drivers, but I'm sure they're doing tremendous also. But yes, I'd support doing what we can to recognize everything they're bringing to their jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller, what role can the school board have to promote opportunities and programs to prepare students for a rapidly changing world of diverse economies and cultures?
What programs can we do? I think the most important programs we can do is to try to connect students and their learning with their future jobs and their goals and their careers that they want, and the career pathways are doing that. I see a lot of community school partnerships and a lot of business school partnerships to aid for this. As far as diversity, exposing people to different cultures, different music, different customs would be a good thing. And just being with other students and interacting with them. And that's the way to, interacting with people is the best way to get to know people and to understand what their culture and their ideas are. And so we have many different kinds of students in our schools, and just by the interaction of people, that's the way to do it.
Dr. Parks.
So our district's been doing some really amazing things around these issues of helping our kids find a career path that I've been really proud of. So there's the Vertex initiative that's been happening at the high school level, where students can explore all kinds of different options and then also see kind of the pathways of classes that they need to take to get to that actual career at some point. We also have opportunities for students to work with community partners, whether that's through mentoring, through the IJAC program, through all kinds of other community partnerships that we have, so they can really learn and explore different options. We had a test day that was happening for students where they could have access to take the ACT test test or other kinds of tests that would be an opportunity that some kids might not have without that option, because it does cost money to be able to have access to some of those opportunities. Really wanting students to explore all kinds of options. And when we think about diversity in a changing world, like it's got to come back to having really innovative curriculums that include perspectives from outside, giving them opportunities to experience that through expeditionary learning when that can happen, and really being able to be flexible and nimble with what our kids are learning so that we're adapting to the world around them, which I have seen happen. A lot of the curriculums that we have now can be updated to whatever is currently happening versus an old textbook you've had for 15 years that doesn't change. And so there's lots of ways that we can help kids be future ready.
Ms. Whitman.
Future ready, exactly what Kate said. We want each student to know what their plan is, have a plan when they graduate from high school. Not everyone is bound to go to a four-year college, and Kate talked about the Vertex initiative. We have pathways. In 2022, we had 6 different pathways for different fields that students could go into. We start as early as in the middle school, having them with questionnaires and finding out what their likes and dislikes, what their interests are, what they feel like they want to do when they graduate. And now we're up to 13 pathways in 2023, and we're going strong. We have a great lead person for our secondary education that works with we have the colleges in our community. We have employers, manufacturing. A lot of these students could get their foot in the door in the colleges and NICC with the employer and get some work experience and have all that happen and no cost to them while they're still in high school. So we are really trying to encourage a pathway for every student. And then there's always the students that are going off to a college, with different professions, and we have pathways for that. So we're really trying to look at just be versatile, because every student is different, and trying to cover every opportunity that they could get.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel.
Thank you. So I think the district has some excellent programs involving diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I think those can help the students to be ready when they're working in places and environments with a wide range of people. I think the teachers and the curriculum, it does a good job of, it does a good job, but we can keep trying to improve. That the idea is people have to be lifelong learners. It's not just, actually mastering algebra is not the key. It's that you know how to master algebra. So when you end up becoming a computer programmer, you can keep learning the new languages and stuff. And it doesn't matter what your job is, all jobs require constant change. As a lawyer, the first half of my career, I had more of a general practice, so I was constantly learning new areas, and I think a lot of that I was able to do it because of the education that I had. But that is all I have. Thank you.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
So there's nothing more humbling than realizing you can't figure out something to do on your iPhone and you have to hand it over to your preteen or your teen to figure out how to turn the screen or get it to stop playing music in the background. This is an experience that happens all the time in my family. I have one child at Hempstead, one at Roosevelt, and one at Eisenhower. When we moved to Dubuque, my oldest daughter was starting second grade, and we became familiar with technology in the classroom, such as smart boards. That child is now in 11th grade, and she has completed a number of classes in coding through a class called Exploratory, which has exposed her to things that are more technologically advanced than what I learned. And my own father, when I was growing up, transitioned his own school curriculum from shop to technology education. So for a while, I thought I was really on the cutting edge. my children have absolutely loved all of the technology that they've been exposed to in the classroom. And I feel like with the new bond measure, I was even more excited to learn that the architects employed teachers in the design process to create spaces that allowed maximizing technology and soft skills that employers are wanting. They expect students not only to be able to get the bulk of their work done during the day, but in small group settings where they can maximize their ability to learn to be cooperative.
Thank you. Should our curriculums include how slavery governed our economics and history over the years? And if so, how should that be presented? We'll start with Ms. Parks.
I think our curriculum should represent accurately our history. And we shouldn't be afraid of looking at parts of our history that maybe we're not as proud of, including how slavery had an impact on that. I think there has been a concern from some folks that public schools are teaching, I'm going to say it, the scary word, critical race theory. And, you know, our public schools aren't law schools or graduate schools, so that's just not a thing that's happening. But I think what should happen is that students should know about the complicated aspects of our history so that they're aware of it and we can maybe have a future that looks a little different than our past did. As an educator myself who teaches about these very issues with college students, like I often find when they come to some of my classes that they are frustrated that they didn't know some of the things that they learned in my class before they got there. And so I think we're really doing students a disservice if we're scared to encounter or to grapple with aspects of our history that were challenging and problematic. And certainly for students of color, like ignoring that history ignores their heritage, it ignores their past. And I don't think that that's helpful either. So I really think that educators do an excellent job and can continue to really approach these really complicated topics in ways that are age appropriate, that make sense for kids, but also get them thinking critically about what our history is so that they can be more informed about it and maybe make better decisions as we go forward.
Ms. Whitman.
I believe, or agree completely with what Kay Parks was just saying. What a better place for our kids to talk about the sensitive subjects than at school. When they're, you know, in middle school, high school, elementary, there are different subjects that are a little sensitive to some people, but I believe in teaching history, the way it actually happened. We want our kids to be critical thinkers, and how are they going to be critical thinkers if all they're exposed to is a good positive? You know, we want them to be good decision makers, so that comes, you're exposed to the good with the bad, and then learn when you're an adult, when we don't have control, they're 18, 19, they're off to college, they're off on their first job, how do we expect them to be contributing citizen to their community if they were sheltered? So I think school is the best place to be exposed to a lot of uncomfortable subjects and uncomfortable topics.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel.
Thank you very much. So I absolutely love history, and I probably read a history book a month. And I strongly believe you have to accurately teach history, and it is there are so many things that you can learn from the glorious parts of history and the darker parts of history, and to just take the position that the United States of America has always been sort of a perfect place, I think that does everybody a disservice. And it's much more valuable to, you know, teach the students accurately what happened, and the goal that has always been trying to make a more perfect union. It didn't start out as a perfect union. We're not a perfect union yet, but we can continue to try to work at it. Thank you.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire, how would you like to see topics like slavery presented in class?
Like all my previous colleagues have mentioned, I do feel like it's important for learners of all ages to be exposed to content that is age appropriate, if not somewhat uncomfortable. I think that the discomfort is in the realization that the world is actually a much bigger and more beautiful place than what we might originally believe, especially in Dubuque, Iowa, which is not necessarily known as being the absolute most diverse place, not even in the Midwest. I believe that it's important to use the arts as a way to make these sensitive historical subjects accessible, including for small children. So whether this comes as diverse experiences through music, through poetry, literature, songs, theater, through movies, videos, I feel like we can't shy away from the more painful things that our country has gone through.
Ms. Mueller.
Yes, I believe in teaching all of history, and I believe in discussing all the negative and positive aspects of history. But I also think part of our civics education has to be in teaching our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and to make or to let our students know that our founding fathers did not live, and mothers, did not live in a time of absolute justice. They experienced a lot of injustice, and we still do not have absolute justice, and maybe we never will have absolute justice. But what was neat about our founding fathers and mothers was that they sat down and went, well, what would a government look like that did have absolute justice? And this is where the American dream comes in. And they wrote down, based on the injustices they experienced, what they thought a government should be like that had justice. And it's that American dream that binds us together, because we are such a diverse culture. We don't have common language or common customs, but we have this dream of what absolute justice would look like. That's what holds us together as Americans. And I think it's important to pass that on to our children.
Thank you. We'll return to the bond referendum for the next question. The principal of the $150 million is set to be covered without a tax increase, but what about interest on that bond? Ms. Whitman, we'll start with you.
Okay, the entire bond could possibly be up. We're looking for an approval of $150 million. That is to cover all the projects that we spoke about earlier. As you know, we're not going to do all these projects day one. So we'll start off with probably the middle schools. We'll start doing some air conditioning in, a couple schools at a time. We have kind of a timeline set out of when we're going to do these projects. So not all the money is going to be advanced at one time. So the payback is not going to be interest on $150 million day one. So even the land acquisition, that might not happen for a very long time. So as the funds are advanced, then that's when we have to have debt service. But we've already put that in our formula. Because of less pupils, less supplemental state aid, we are budgeting, which we can control that, budgeting that we do have funds for debt service when it's needed, but it won't all have to be paid up front. So the bonds will be drawn as needed. So some of the money we may not even grab till 2028, 2029, 2030. And we'll get the best interest rates we can, but we have the ability to move funds around so we do not have to increase our tax levy. We can't promise 10 years from now that it won't increase or decrease. But in the foreseeable future, with what our CFO has put into place, we don't see an increase.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel?
Yes. I do not have that. I don't have the level of understanding Ms. Whitman has on that issue, and I'm glad she went first.
That's honest, Dirk.
Yes. I've got to know Kevin Kelleher. I think he is smart, and that he would not fudge the numbers or anything like that. So to a large extent, I'm relying on Mr. Kelleher, and if he says he's analyzed it and it's going to work, I trust him. Thank you.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
So I attended 2 of the 3 speaking sessions regarding the bond referendum, I had not only my own personal questions, but I also had questions from friends and neighbors about how all this is going to work. I've been in school many years. I am not a finance expert either, but as I understand it, we have the ability to use the current funds and take out GO bonds to make this referendum happen rather smoothly. One thing that I continue to think about that no one has a crystal ball is what if our property taxes are increased from a different source? I do think that needs to be mentioned because lots of folks are worried about their taxes going up. Should it happen, it does not appear that this is part of the bond referendum. If your taxes are going up, it's because of other elected representatives making decisions to try to take more of your taxpayer dollars. Those dollars should be used as wisely as possible. As I understand it, and in asking repeated questions from Kevin Kelleher, I feel like the committee worked tirelessly to present us with a bond referendum where the taxes will not go up strictly because of the use for the new schools and the other projects in the bond.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller.
Okay, I'm also confident that the tax levy rate will remain the same of $14.51 per $1,000 of taxable valuation. And in addition to what's been said, especially what Lisa said about not borrowing all $150 million at once, and the other part of that is that by, at first we're just going to be paying architects for their planning. And then by the time we get to the point where we're paying for construction materials and workforce, part of that first money that was borrowed will already be paid off. So that's why you can keep some of that interest down. Another factor is that general obligation bonds are backed by property tax, whereas the saved bonds are backed, the sales tax bonds are obviously backed by sales tax. So there's less risk on a general obligation bond, therefore you can have a lesser interest rate. And therefore, they're anticipating maybe saving $8.5 million in interest over the period of time there. So that's another thing. As far as the property evaluation goes, we've been listening to an accountant that said, right, currently we pay on 54% of the property tax evaluation, but there will be a rollback from the state of Iowa. So that next year they're anticipating you'll only be paying on 47% of your taxable evaluation. Now, sadly for us with this election coming up, these things are not settled yet. This will happen in the spring. All right? And so, but I am convinced that the tax levy rate will not go up.
Ms. Parks.
Yeah, everyone stole all the answers I was going to say. So that's the challenge of going last on this question. But just, I think as we think about this, like obviously we can't have a crystal ball. We can't predict the future, so we have to control the things that we can control. And we have a very strong team leading us. Kevin Kelleher has gotten state-level recognition for his expertise on school finance, which if you sit down in a school finance session, it will melt your brain. And I've done it 3 times and partly melted my brain every time. But it's just important for us to know that the board has done an excellent job and our financial team has done an excellent job with save money, being good stewards of that, trying to make sure we're doing the best for the public tax dollars, looking at interest rates, trying to make sure we get the best yield when we can to sell those bonds. And we've planned ahead. There's wiggle room to be able to address when this costs, if costs change or if rates go up so that we can keep that 14.51 at a stable rate. And so I think that's really important for the public to understand that there is room in other funds. We've saved for it so that we would be able to adjust that. And like Cindy said, looking at a GO bond versus using saved dollars saves us $8.5 million in interest, which is significant. And waiting potentially could cost the district, twice as much for these projects if we have to wait because of the cost of construction going up and other things out of our control.
Thank you. Chronic school absenteeism has risen across the country. How does Dubuque compare with the average, and do you see a need for changes in how absenteeism is handled? And we'll begin with Mr. Hamel.
I do not know what the numbers are in terms of Dubuque versus national numbers. I do know that it's a problem. I think I don't think a penal approach is the way to go. I don't think that criminally charging parents, things of that nature, are going to work. Instead, I think the approach has to be to try to work with the parents, figure out what their problems are, and try to help address the problems. And those can be everything from, lack of reliable transportation, difficult work hours. There's all sorts of reasons why there is that sort of chronic absenteeism. In other stages, sometimes it really can just come down to it's not a high priority for the parents or the children. And in those situations, I've seen any number of the principals after, the start of the first class, they'll go out driving around to pick up kids and bring them in. And it's, maybe it seems like it's not a good use of time, but getting the children into school and getting them educated really does work. Thank you.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
So I also don't have the exact data on exactly what Dubuque's absenteeism rate is and how that compares to similar schools. I know for a fact that when kids are hungry, when they are faced with a unstable living situation, when their other needs aren't met, school, as much as the parents want it to be a priority, may be a challenge too great for families. So I agree with Mr. Hamill that punishing parents is not the way to ultimately meet those families' needs. And yet it is our utmost important to educate those students, help them not only make it to high school, but to graduate high school and become productive members of our community. I was actually delighted when I had a conversation in clinic several weeks ago and learned that at Lincoln Elementary School, they had a carnival event to welcome kids back to school with an attendance rate of over 70% of families. And so I think there's ways that we can make school fun and exciting and bring families back to be active participants in their child's education that don't have to cost very much. And that will also allow us an avenue to share support services in place that those families can tap into to help overcome the obstacles of kids getting to school.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller, can you tell us your thoughts on absenteeism?
Yeah, absenteeism is a big problem and one that needs to be addressed. And it can have to do with transportation. And so perhaps we can do something through encouraging the Jewel bus system to work in cooperation with the district as they have been on some projects. That would be one way. And we need to talk with parents and see what is your problem. We need to encourage parents to value education and value school attendance. Again, I don't think that it does any good to punish parents. That's not the way to go. We need to try to get students involved in school in other ways through extracurricular activities like sports, like music, like art projects or clubs, or get their interests, give them a reason to want to come to school. So I just think it's an important problem that needs to be addressed from a lot of different avenues.
Ms. Parks.
So you'd expect me to have the numbers, but I don't. So I'm just going to own that I don't know them off the top of my head. But what I do know is that this has been an issue for us as a district, and it's been so important that it's a priority initiative for us for this year that the district is focusing on to address absenteeism and to look at how to improve the numbers of students that are coming to school every day. It's been especially a problem since COVID, which just kind of shook everything up. So I think we're trying to bounce back from where we were before that. We actually just heard from a principal at Audubon at the strategic plan update on Monday about all of the things that he's doing at his school to increase attendance. One thing that I think was very impressive and something we can look at as a district was that he was looking at a really data-driven model and paying attention to like what are days where we see a higher number of kids that aren't here, and is there any pattern or trend that we can look at to kind of anticipate that. Audubon also has a school connector that does a lot of work connecting with families to meet them at home, to see what the barriers are or what support and resources we can provide to help them get their kids to school. And he is also doing all of these amazing things involving parents, teachers, and kids to figure out how to make this fun, make it a competition, to get at that state level where that the state wants to see, which is at least 95%. So it's a high threshold, and it should be, because being in school is so important. So I think communicating with parents, getting kids involved to make it fun, and really figuring out what are the barriers that are making it difficult.
Ms. Whitman.
Yes, we just talked about it at our strategic plan, so that was the first thing. We had a presenter from one of the elementary schools. They feel parent participation, get the family involved, make school a play. You know, they all want their kids to go to school. It's not that they don't, but there's family situations at home that for some reason, it could be weather-related, that they're not coming to school. So we work with the Jewel buses. We work... Is there a storm?
Oh, it's
Amber
an Amber
Alert.
Alert.
Okay. We do work with other
Can we reset
ways.
time, maybe? Sorry. I'm sorry for the interruption, Ms.
okay.
Whitman. You can go on. Oh,
Where is it coming from? The speaker?
this is very fun for the viewers at home.
Viewers
Who
at home
probably
know
can't
there's an Amber
hear
Alert
that our
because
phones are all going off.
everyone's phone is going crazy. Okay.
I think that's
It's in Des
it.
Moines, yeah.
It's in Des
So-
Moines.
Yeah.
Hopefully everything's okay.
Okay, so in the elementary level of our children, it's, if we can get parent participation, a reason for them to, school is a happy place for these kids, so they all want to be there. So the more we can involve the families and they know how important it is to get to school, the better job we're going to have to achieve that 95 average percentile. There are counselors, there's life coaches, there's connectors that will reach out to the families if they're missing. So we do take a lot of effort to bring these kids into school. We will use the Jewel buses, you know, we'll find different alternatives to bring them to school and make sure they're there. We have before and after school care for these kids, that if a parent has to get to work early or can't pick them up right after school, we have done those accommodations for families. It's so important to get them to school, and if they feel, and also with our extracurricular, our STEM programs, everything that we're trying to do in the middle school and high schools, the kids, if they have a reason, something that they're excited to come to school for, if we can just get them with one thing, then and keep them in our schools and find something that they're really tuned into, then they're going to start, it's going to wear off on the other subject that they're, you know, their other coursework, if we can find one thing that they're really excited to come for. So we are making a lot of efforts, and that's in our strategic plan. It's very important to us.
Thank you. So there's a lot of interest in the bond referendum. This question is also related to that, but it's a different take. There was no mention of recycling, reuse, and future green plans in the information about the bond referendum. What are those plans? Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire, your thoughts?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. I've educated as much as I can about this bond referendum, and I also do not believe that there's been a great deal of time spent thinking about reduced consumption and recycling. I would love to bring this back to the architects and the instructional design folks to figure out how we can maximize that and be good citizens of our environment. I do remember that there was some time spent thinking and talking about how this building will be far more energy efficient than our current buildings, which in itself will not only be good for the planet, but also save the district money. So time's been spent on natural lighting and using energy efficient appliances and lighting to try to minimize the impact on our environment. But I'd love to learn more, actually.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller.
Yeah, in talking with the architects, we were discussing when Washington would be torn down if this bond issue goes through. And they led us to believe that nowadays, when you tear down a building, most everything is recycled. Everything that can be captured is taken out, the bricks, whatever's available to be recycled, they do so. So there's, so I was impressed by that. So they are already thinking about it and planning about it for it. And so that would be done.
Ms. Parks.
I've been extremely impressed with the efforts that have already been going on at the district level to be conscientious about the environment and our energy use. We work with a group called Synergistic that does building energy audits at pretty much all the time, like they're always in our buildings, to see where are places where we can help save energy and reduce costs and reduce our usage. And so that's something the board is brought up to date about all the time. I know that's not specific to the bond referendum, but I just want you to know that's the thing that already happens. We've also supported a solar project that's happening at Sageville, which is another way that we're reducing energy costs and trying to use different fuel source. But I agree with what others have said, that this gives us an opportunity to build a new building with the middle school in particular that would be more energy efficient. And, you know, the cost to continue to repair and maintain some of our older buildings does add up. It's not cheap for us to do that. And so this does give us a new opportunity to look at this in a more innovative way that's more conscientious about our energy consumption. And I think as we get to like air conditioning more schools, that'll be part of the energy audit that Synergistic is doing to make sure that we're maximizing, you know, that new benefit to schools, but not in a way that ends up causing more energy use or causing more cost to the district. So there's already been a lot of proactive efforts to be conscientious on this issue, and I expect that that would continue moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. Whitman.
Just like what Kate said, we already are addressing energy efficiencies. In addition to Sageville just getting the solar panels, our building next door, the central kitchen, already has solar panels. So and with Synergistics, that started a couple years ago, we're working with the employees when to shut off lights, turn down the air when you're not using the buildings. We're doing all of those energy efficient things right now. And with the bond referendum, that's one of the reasons for building this new middle school. We have two very old buildings that are not cost efficient. And to, you know, if we didn't have the bond and we wanted to add on to Jeff, add on to Washington middle schools, there's still old buildings in the core. You know, the ductwork, all the air and heat, you know, boilers, everything is old. So we want to be more energy efficient and build a building that will take us another 30 years, 100 years. You know, I don't, you know, because maintenance, we're always repairing the buildings and we're trying to be a step ahead so nothing is costing us more. We're adding new roofs, we're adding efficiencies all the time. So it's an ongoing thing.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel.
I don't have anything to add. I would just say I'd support all the things that the district is doing and keep looking for additional areas where we can work on recycling, maximum energy efficiency and such. Thank you.
Thank you. What is your position on having police in our middle schools and high schools? Ms. Miller, we'll begin with you.
I believe they do have some resource officers in the buildings right now, and I think that's a very good thing, not only for the protection of our students, but also so that students get to know police as people and they make a connection with them. So I think that's a very good thing. And I hope that it will continue and that maybe we can even expand it if we ever get more money in our district.
Ms. Parks?
I know in other areas of the country that this has not been such a positive for some students in some buildings. That's not what I have seen in my time in the district. It seems that the school district has a good partnership with the Dubuque Police Department. The officers that are serving in those roles are trained to know how to interact with students and what their jobs are at schools. And they've been really important in times when we've had safety issues that have come up. There was an incident last year at Hempstead where some people got into the building that did not belong there and were looking to harm a student. And the resource officers were crucial in helping deal with that, but also in helping the staff and students kind of cope with the aftermath of something like that. That's really scary. And so, we're at a time where, as a parent, like my worst nightmare is thinking about some of the things that we've seen around the country happening at schools with shooters or with safety. And so this is an added layer of protection and safety for our students. But there are also professionals who understand what their role is with our kids and that they are there as another adult to help support support our kids in the learning environment and to make that a positive experience.
Thank you. Ms. Whitman?
The resource officers in our school, it is a very positive thing. It's both ways, with the police department and with the school district sharing, the cost of these resource officers. We're trying to make our schools a safe place. And these officers want to be approachable to the kids. Even the staff, if they need to approach someone that something's unexpected is going on. So if they're walking the buildings, and they're not always there just looking for trouble. Maybe a student wants to talk to one of them. And so if they're in the buildings and they're used to seeing these people, they're more approachable. And I'm sure it helps the police officers on the outside of our buildings too to know what's going on in the schools. So we want our kids to feel safe and know that there's someone that they can go to, talk to. Maybe they would rather go to that resource officer than their counselor or their teacher. So we will continue this. This is very important in our schools.
Mr. Hamel, your thoughts on resource officers or police officers in schools?
I am in favor of the resource officers in the schools. In my limited experience with them, I think they're doing an excellent job. I get a lot of secondhand reports, and again, all the reports are very positive. Unfortunately, we do have violence in our schools between students. And also violence directed at the teachers and the staff. I think the resource officers are a part of the solution, but one of the things I would try to work for is more funding for interventionist and counseling to help the offending students. Because the goal has to be to protect the teachers, the staff, and the other students.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
Thanks for this important question. I wasn't quite sure what the climate was, particularly at the local middle schools and high schools, so I asked my kids. My daughter Lyndon that goes to Roosevelt, I asked her, do you feel safe in school? Do you like going to school at Roosevelt? And she said, yeah, why do you ask? And I said, oh, some other adults want to know. She said, Mom, I feel really safe because I know Officer Marzetti's there and she'll help me no matter what's going on. So I found that to be very interesting. There were two girls that had gotten in a physical altercation that very week at Roosevelt. There was harm done. Officer Marzetti got in the middle of it, apparently, and she herself was injured and had to take some time off. That's a tough job for school resource officers to be in and to go back day after day, week after week. I've also talked with my high school daughter who is at Hempstead about issues of safety, and she tells me that she pretty much knows how to avoid confrontation with folks that are looking for trouble. When I watch her hanging out with her friends at the Hempstead High School football games, I see students smiling, giving the side eye to the school resource officers that are there, maybe a little fist bump when their friends aren't working. And so it would be easy to say that having police officers in the schools is unwelcome. In my personal experience, my kids like it a lot.
And then our last question before closing remarks. Should the school board take on a role to promote civics education and a citizen's right and obligation to vote, given that elections have consequences? Ms. Parks, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, I think we should. Part of why we need strong public education is so that we are producing informed citizens who can participate in our democracy. And so I think, I don't remember a lot about my civics education anymore because it's been a while since I was in high school. It didn't really fire me up to participate, though, and to be an active voter and to even pay attention. So I think there is definitely a role in how we're teaching kids civics and the importance of it and why it matters for them to participate in this system and what happens when they don't participate or when democracies are facing crises. So I think, there's definitely a role as we look at our curriculum. The school board's not going to micromanage what that is, but I think we can support, where that's happening in our curriculum and make it a vital part of it.
Ms. Whitman.
I do support that in our schools. I wish there was more of it when I was a student. Unless you're in a household that they're talking, the family unit at home is talking politics and talking voting and different things, you really don't know that much while you're going through school. So it's great that we have the teachers and the people in place to teach that. It's going to be a great opportunity next year with the presidential election. So the more that the kids can get involved and understand more, it's going to make them better voters and know how important it is to get out and vote when they graduate. So yes, it's very important.
Mr. Hamel?
Yes, I would definitely support that kind of civics education, explaining to the students the rights to vote, and yes, what are the consequences of voting and not voting. And I would just, say from a personal observation, last couple elections, I've worked as a poll worker, and in Dubuque, the voters skew very old. It's you do not see too many 18 or 19-year-olds. You don't see too many 20-somethings. You don't see too many 30-somethings. It's like people don't start voting until they're 40, and at the earliest. So no, I think it's a very worthwhile thing to do. Thank you.
Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire, can you talk to us about civic and voting rights in schools?
I certainly sense that there's some apathy in the younger generation and that they don't necessarily feel compelled to vote, and yet they often do have strong opinions. They're just not quite sure the proper process to make their opinions heard, and I don't know that they necessarily see themselves as change advocates. As published in the Telegraph Herald on May 24th, 2023, Dubuque Senior High School was awarded a special award called the Carrie Chapman Cat Award, which is given to only a small number of schools. And the requirement is you have to have at least 90% of your eligible student body registered to vote. I thought that was fantastic. I think it should be the goal of all schools to encourage registration to vote, regardless of political affiliation, but more that it's our civic obligation to make the world a better place.
Ms. Mueller?
Yes, of course, I agree that civics education is very important. I think students need to know how their government is set up, how it functions, how it works, what their rights are, and how they can participate. I think that's a great idea about registration at the high schools so that they're able to vote. And I'll be interested to see what happens with the general obligation bond, because as I was collecting signatures on petitions, I noticed kind of an age difference. And I noticed a lot of the young people and their kids are very interested in getting air conditioning in the schools, very interested in getting the new middle school. So it will be interesting to see if these people come out to vote this time, and I think that would be a very, very good thing.
It's now time for closing remarks. Opening remarks began with Mr. Hamel, so we'll start from the other end. Lisa Whitman, you'll have 2 minutes for a closing remark. We'll then move to Kate Parks and so on down. So Ms. Whitman, your closing remarks, please.
Probably wondering why I want another 4 years on the board. I've been on it for 8 years. It was a whirlwind the first couple years. There's so much to learn, and you're not expected to know everything. You go in your first meeting, I thought, oh, this is not what I thought. But it is I'm very passionate about it. My husband's a teacher and a coach, and I had 5 kids go through the public schools, and they're very successful, very happy individuals. And I do say it's not all my parenting or my husband's parenting. It has a lot to do with their schools. So this is a way. I'm a banker. I do numbers all the time. So on the finance side of the school district, that's my most important thing that I'm very involved in, extracurricular. That's one of the reasons I even got on the board to begin with, is we got to make a reason for kids to want to come to school and make it fun, make it memories for them, because you're only going to be 18, 19 once, and then you're off in the real world. So I feel I have a lot to contribute, and with the bond referendum, with the initiatives to help our students know what to do when they leave high school, there's a lot going on that I want to be part of. Our strategic plan that we talked about, that started in 2012, 13. Next year, we're going to have to update all our initiatives. I want to be part of that. So I have more work that I want to finish. So I'm very anxious to continue what I've been doing for the last 8 years.
Thank you. Ms. Parks.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be running again. As you've seen from the variety of questions that we've been asked tonight, being on the school board is not for the faint of heart, and we have to think about all kinds of different issues that touch all kinds of aspects of education. So it really requires someone who is going to be advocating for public education and also is going to think about what all of our students need. We're at a pivotal moment in our state where it's really important who sits at these tables, because a lot of times the legislation comes to us without any guidance, and so we're the ones who have to make decisions about how laws are actually enacted in our district. And I strongly believe we have to make sure we're doing that in a way that supports all of our students and our teachers, while staying true to what's best for kids, which this board has been and I have been. I've been a fierce advocate for public education in my 4 years on the board. I agree with Ms. Whitman that you certainly don't know what you're getting into in your first year, and when I got into it, we had a global pandemic just to top it off. So I had a lot to learn, but I did the work. I went to conferences, I talked to the staff, I talked to district leaders and tried to learn as much as I possibly could. And then I've been leading our board through some of the most important decisions that we can make. We hired a superintendent. We had to unfortunately close a school. We're making decisions about our financial oversight. We had to make policy around COVID and get through that crisis. And I brought a thoughtfulness to my decision-making, a collaboration mindset as our board worked together to get to the right decisions. And I'm also ready to continue that work. There's a lot to do, especially as we grapple with the outcome of the bond referendum, but also think strategically about what we want for our district for the next 5 years. So I couldn't be more excited to be back on the ballot, and I hope I can get your support. Thank you.
Ms. Mueller.
First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity to present our views. It was great. I have spent my life in the service to the students of this community to help provide them with a good education, because a good education is the foundation for a good life. And now I would like to continue my service on the board to help follow through on the bond referendum projects, and also because I see a board member as a link between the administration and the community. And as I said before, I want to take the concerns and the ideas of people out in our community and bring them to the administration so we can look for solutions, so we can find ways to implement the good ideas. And I also want to be transparent and take what the administration has in ways of concerns and ideas and go out to the community and look for their input before we make decisions. So I sincerely want to ask for your vote, and if you will vote for Cynthia Mueller on November 7th, I will really appreciate it, and thank you.
Your closing remarks, Dr. Jacobitz-Kazire.
So many folks in the community know me as Dr. Kazire. You may not know that both of my parents were public school teachers. I'm married to a public school teacher, and I currently have 3 students in the district. This is something I'm very proud of, and I think makes me ideally positioned to really understand what students are experiencing in our building. And I'm very driven to make sure that they get the absolute best education possible. Being a school board member is so much more because you carry the responsibility of building a vibrant and equitable community for all students. In my clinical life, I see many children of all ages. Not all of them have the resources that my family has. But if elected to the board, I will be able to have a louder voice to advocate for them, to have the absolute best education possible. And so I also would love to have your consideration for placing me on the school board. This is my first ever elected position, which I'm excited about and happy to answer any other follow-up questions after this session.
Mr. Hamel, your closing remarks.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I practiced law here in Dubuque for 37 years. In that time, I learned a lot about analyzing and solving problems. I am also a big believer and supporter of the value of public education. The children and the families of the district have a wide range of strengths and weaknesses. Educating all those students to be their best possible selves is an extremely difficult task. But I think it's a task that has the potential of being able to help address many of the problems that we have in our society. The goal, the mission statement of the district is to develop world-class learners and citizens of character. I think that is an absolutely tremendous goal, and I would really like the opportunity to be part of that process. Thank you.
The Dubuque League of Women Voters thanks all of the candidates for their participation. This forum may be seen again on the Dubuque Community Schools Facebook page and Twitter pages, and it will be available for viewing after the event on the district website, which is www.dbqschools.org. We thank the Dubuque Community School staff for broadcasting this forum. I'd like to thank the voters for attending and watching and for providing us with questions. Remember to vote on November 7th, at which time you will vote for the Dubuque City Council, the Dubuque Community School Board, and the General Obligation School Bond issue. Thank you. Have a good evening.